Thank you, Jake. Indeed, together we can protect the progress of our customers, our partners, and the society in large. So for ESET's latest threat research, please download our threat report available from tomorrow, June 2nd. And now, onto our next speaker, James Rodwald, ESET's Security Services Team Lead. He will walk us through a day in the life of threat monitoring, powered by ESET Inspect. Welcome to the stage, James.
Hello, so I'm James Ordewald. I'm the Security Services Team Lead for ESET North America. I've been working with ESET for about 12 years and moved throughout multiple teams. I've seen lots of security incidents. So I'm going to start talking about increasing your visibility using ESET Inspect. So today's agenda for this is going to be, I'm going to cover what is an EDR really quick, just in case there's anyone here that doesn't know what an EDR is. And then we're going to cover what is gained by using ESET Inspect, why these added features are important, and are there any real-world examples where ESET Inspect can help out. So endpoint detection and response, what is it? Endpoint detection and response is just detection, which is visibility, and response, which is your ability to control whatever you're seeing. So it's visibility into what's happening on endpoints. This is active components, fileless attacks, root cause, lateral movement, any data that's affected. That can be really important if you're ever affected by ransomware, what folders had encryption happen to them so that you can see about how bad it was affecting you. And you get to see the techniques, tactics, and procedures that are used by the attack. Now, for control, how do you respond? Well, you can actually block execution, isolate a computer from the network, kill a process, or clean a file off of a system. So a lot of you might be wondering, well, I'm using ESET Protect on my systems, so I'm protected, right? Yes, you're using strong world-class protection that is going to detect and block malware. But there's going to be blind spots there, and that's where we're going to start covering here. So what is gained by ESET Inspect? First off, let's talk about how ESET Inspect works. So if you already have ESET endpoint protection, protecting your systems, ESET Inspect is just tapping into the endpoint so that it can start seeing all the processes, files, executables on the system, so it can easily tap into the behaviors that are happening there. So let's start covering some scenarios here. So the very first scenario I want to cover is actually something that keeps coming up every few months or so, where ESET protection detects and stops a threat. So it detected a threat, but how did it get there? So last month, we actually had a customer who on their server has ESET file security protecting it, and they ended up having a detection happen in running memory of PowerShell. So PowerShell was detected and killed by ESET file security on the server, and they were protected. Awesome. But they were left with a burning question. How did PowerShell even launch to get to the point where a threat was detected? And they're only using ESET file security, so no ESET Inspect was installed. So they're left with minimal visibility and uncertainty. We could only check to see if there was any persistence, or maybe if they had like RDP or SMB open, and maybe something was exploited there. But in reality, we were just left with, okay, PowerShell launched and detected a threat. Had they been using ESET Inspect, they gain a higher level of visibility to what happens. So this is just one possible scenario of what might have happened for them. It may have been something else, but it could have been something as simple as Outlook opening a MSL attachment, which shows us that the root cause is an email that came in. I now know I may need to train that user on how to identify malicious emails. And also I can see that there's other behaviors that are happening, like run DLL32 executed another DLL. That other DLL doesn't even have to be malware, so it's going to avoid detection. Run DLL32 is built into Windows. It's not going to be detected. Eventually, PowerShell was launched and tried to do maybe a reflective DLL execution where it's just doing something in memory. Now we know that, okay, this happened here, and then the threat was detected and blocked. So this just shows us all the different aspects that we gain visibility into when we're using ESET Inspect to see what's happening on our systems. Additionally, we gain more controls. we can actually say, if I see this behavior of Outlook opening up Excel and then launching run DLL32, I can actually block this execution, or maybe I want to say I want to clean up the DLL file as well. Also, we could say if I see the behavior of PowerShell trying to do a reflective DLL loading, I can just block PowerShell right there. And that's all things that we can block before the threat is detected by ESET endpoint protection. And this helps give peace of mind to a customer because they're going to be able to see what is happening on a system and be able to start answering questions of how did that threat arrive on my network. So moving on to our next scenario that I want to talk about, this is where we're going to talk about user misbehavior. And specifically, we're going to be talking about when a user is playing games on a network. So this is something that keeps happening whenever we install ESET Inspect for a customer. We keep seeing two specific games, actually. And it's two different types of customers. So we have our first type of customer, customer one, where they're a typical business, and there's a handful of employees playing Dota on the network. They have local admin rights to their laptops, so they can install whatever they want. And typically, these admins know that there's something going on with these end users, but they have no way of seeing what's happening. So let's take a look at what we can see if we do not have ESET Inspect and we're just using ESET Protect. Well, we actually do have some visibility in ESET Protect. We can see if a third-party application is installed. So we can see, is Dota installed? But we can't see when it's being used. Also, if the end user is smart enough, they may have found a way to put Dota on the computer, but it's not actually installed, so then you're not going to see it. So it's not uncommon for us to install ESET Inspect, and suddenly we start seeing, oh, here's a computer where someone's playing Dota. Is this software you allow on your network? They say no, and that's actually an end user we're having a problem with. Can you tell me what time they were playing Dota? And it's between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. for one of the customers that we saw. So that's 6 hours of the workday that they're playing Dota instead of working. So that's misbehavior that they're now able to see because of ESET Inspect. They've got increased visibility. They can see not just that the software is installed, but they can see when it's being used. That's valuable information to them. They gain additional control, but something interesting about these admins with the Dota users, they actually don't want to take advantage of the blocking and cleaning Dota. They just want to know when it's happening and see how they can track that it's happening. But they gained a peace of mind because now they can actually answer information that they can take to their management team. So moving on to our second customer type, this tends to be the education sector, and it tends to be this video game called Roblox that we end up seeing on almost all of these education sector customers. So without using ESET Inspect, these customers can only see nothing about Roblox on the network because the way Roblox is being played is it's not installed software. So they're left sitting there like, oh, it's standalone software. We don't even know where it's being used. All we know is teachers are complaining that students aren't completing assignments because they're busy playing Roblox. So they can't see when it's being used. They have no idea how big of a problem it is. We install ESET Inspect, and suddenly we can see Roblox on tons of different computers. So the visibility they gained is now they can tell which computers have Roblox being used on it, and we actually worked with a few of our customers to make some custom rules to track when it specifically is Roblox, give a detection name that says Roblox found. So that way they can identify these computers easily. They can see when it's being used, and they can see standalone software now with ESET Inspect. So that's super powerful for them to start seeing. And the next thing that our customers really liked, and the best example I have is for one of our 10,000 seat customers for an education sector. As soon as we turned on the additional controls to block the software, within 2 minutes, they had cleaned up and removed Roblox from over 200 computers in their network. The reason why I see that as amazing is what if that was an attacker that's placing tools that aren't malware onto tons of different systems? You can really easily leverage ESET Inspect to find that standalone tool and remove it from your network. And this gave them a peace of mind that showed them how to use ESET Inspect, and they started visualizing how they can use it to start solving other problems that they're having on their network as well. So moving on to our third and final scenario, we're going to start talking about sophisticated attacks. And specifically, I'm not going to talk about advanced persistent threats, but I'm going to talk about ransomware. The reason why I'm going to talk about ransomware is they use a lot of techniques that can be very sophisticated to avoid detection. So let's talk about how a ransomware attack works. You start off with a clean network, something happens, and suddenly you have ransomware. The key thing to know about ransomware is the final stage of the attack. There's actually a bunch of dirty deeds that happened beforehand that led to an attacker eventually deploying ransomware to as many computers on your network as possible. And they're avoiding this detection because they're living off the land. How are they living off the land? There's multiple ways they can do it. Just a few of them are basically using scripting techniques. Just use what's already on the operating system for scripting. They can also download any legitimate software they want that's not malware that can do something that they want to do, like PSExec, or they can use a built-in tool like Windows Management Instrumentation or something else. And then calling back to Jake's presentation here, it tends to be a simply used password is where the attack started, and somebody opened up remote desktop to the outside world. So let's go back to our timeline here, and let's start filling this in a bit. So normally, if I am helping a customer that suffered from a ransomware attack, we end up finding that the attacker logged in with domain admin because a junior admin or some other admin decided, on this server, I want to be able to access it from home, exposes remote desktop to the outside world, and they have a simple-to-guess password or an easily leaked password or password that was leaked previously. So the attacker then wants to not just encrypt the server they're on, they want to gain control over as many computers in the network as they can to encrypt them, so that way they can have a better chance of getting paid if they can successfully encrypt everything. And they might do that using Windows Management Instrumentation, group policy, or maybe PSExec or some other legitimate tools. So they've avoided detection at this point. They're not using any malware, but now they're like, okay, let me put my ransomware on the system, and they find, oh, my ransomware just got deleted and blocked. Now I know there's an endpoint protection there that's actually going to prevent me from deploying my ransomware. So now they're going to work towards disabling or removing the endpoint protection. And that's actually something that 2 weeks ago, we had 2 customers call in one day of each other, where they had turned off internet to their entire companies because they started to see ESET being uninstalled from multiple computers on their network and seeing Active Directory users being created. So they needed help getting the attack stopped there. They were lucky enough to see it before it got to the point where ransomware got deployed. So if you're just using ESET Protect without ESET Inspect, all you're going to see is potentially some ransomware was blocked. You're not going to see how it got there, and you're not going to see any of the living off the land techniques. And you may not even notice your security being disabled or uninstalled. But if you are using ESET Inspect, your visibility grows tremendously. You start to be able to see all the events that happened and have traceability to get back to that root cause. So just in this example, this is just one thing that you might see in there, where it's PSExec being downloaded, PowerShell being launched, DLLs being detected as they're being downloaded, maybe a new service being installed, and then maybe BCD edit to modify the boot of the system so they can try to get into a lower level of the system where maybe protection's not active. And you're going to gain additional controls so that if you start seeing these behaviors, you can start taking actions to start blocking or killing or cleaning files off of your system or isolating computers so that it can't get any further on your network. And this is also going to help you meet cybersecurity insurance requirements. This is something that's becoming more and more popular in the US, and with a few that I've talked from overseas, it's very, very common that if you want to have cybersecurity insurance that is affordable, you need to have an EDR system in place. So if they're already an ESET customer, getting ESET Inspect is not too much work to get them up and running on an EDR system. And this is all going to help give them peace of mind because they'll be able to tell when something's happening on their network and know they'll be able to start reacting to what they see and blocking these actions. So moving on, let's go ahead and quickly summarize everything here. In short, ESET Inspect is going to give you the ability to see and control what's happening on your network. You're going to gain peace of mind from that because you're going to be able to start solving problems, whether they're malware related or misbehavior related. But it's not just about what you gain from ESET Inspect. ESET Inspect is actually giving you what you need to be able to see modern, sophisticated threats or misbehavior on a network. So it's giving you what you need. So a few other things to keep in mind is if you've been using ESET Inspect for a while, maybe you're like, it's giving me too many detections, try our ESET Inspect Cloud. It has a much more simplified user experience, has a few rules that are already set up with auto remediation, and these rules are much more accurate, so they won't give as many false positives. Next, maybe you still want the robustness of as many detections as possible, but you want someone else to manage it. Reach out to your regional managers and find out, do we offer security services in your region? Because we can do MDR for our customers where we're managing the detections and helping respond to it. Also, maybe you have a customer that wants to manage it themselves, but they want SLAs around being able to contact us for if they do encounter an incident and need help addressing that incident, or maybe they see something they believe might be malicious, but they're not quite sure. They can then have a service that allows them to get that speedy, quick contact to us. All right, and at this point, that's everything I have for you guys. Thank you all for your time.